La position de service pour Audi RS4.
On a more positive note of this first stage of service position, if you have the code pertaining to the front flap sensors, you can now access removing the front sensor here without taking the manifold off. I know the bungee on those wires looks sketchy, but trust me when I say the weight of that module and those wires and how softly they are on that bungee, it's not a big deal. We may have to take this off for the next portion of the series though.
Remove the front bumper. You can find this video on the channel.
This clip is from halfway into the job. While my battery was charging for the camera, there were a few points that I wanted to make which are important. The first one is that we all have I can figure out a better way DIY syndrome. I have it myself too. Now the thing I want to say about the water pump on this car, because even on the forums there's been confusion up to this date because people have said that there's a good write-up on the S4. Now, everything that I've done here, which you're going to see in the video so far, there's a lot of trial and error, and it took me 3 steps of thinking to get to this place. Okay? First, I wanted to take apart half the water pump. When I went to a professional mechanic, he gave me a contingency, said that if I can take the bolts out and put them back into the plastic and fix the hose, that's one thing. If not, I have to get a new water pump and the charges are going to be different. I took this information to the forums where experienced people said, don't do this at all, get the whole water pump off. My second line of thought, as you guys will see in the video, is that I tried to take off the water pump off of the aluminum pipe that goes across the front at the bottom. That also has a very tricky bolt that you don't want to strip, so I've abandoned that as well. You're going to see lots of trial and error in here, but this is good for you because you're going to think that you can do things in an easier way, but this is the best way to do it. So where we're at now, or where you will see in the video that this part will continue on, is that we are going to go, and with the service position we have right now and prying up the bottom, you'll see this in the video, I'm going to undo, they're either T25s or T30s on the aluminum pipe. So that's going to be the next step. You're going to start from the beginning of the video. The video is going to pick up in the next clip.
Aw man, I don't even care about the focus. What is this bullshit? Remove the 2 Phillips screws holding on the air duct. I've lost them in the process of making all these DIY videos, but you will have them there. Remove the air duct. Remove the connectors for both horns on both sides of the crash bar using either a screwdriver or a small right angle pick. When you first look at this, it's going to be a bit counterintuitive. It looks like there's a small tab at the top here, but you actually need to use a small right angle pick to get into the back and disconnect this. Be careful not to tug on the wires while you're doing this. I'm a fan of not taking off electrical stuff on old cars if you don't need to. So not that you can't take this off, but it's going to be easier to just take off this one 10mm nut and set the horns gently inside of the plastic covers here and then just reinstall them at the end. If you're a clumsy person, don't do this because you have a chance of tearing the wires. I find this easier though. Same thing on the other side. Alright guys, so this is why I like my real-time videos. This car, I don't know what amount of accidents, small or large, it's really been in. But you can see here, somebody has really messed up, okay? I've never touched this, okay? There's 2 zip ties in here holding this broken electrical connector together. This is clearly a sign that whatever body shop or whoever was working on this had a difficult time getting that pick back there and getting this off without breaking it. And the plastic is brittle and old, so it doesn't necessarily mean that the person was bad at what they were doing. So, my idea of taking off the horn itself and setting it gently in here is probably your best bet if you don't want to buy new expensive parts if this happens to you. So there you go, an example. The horn on this car sounds pretty good, so I'm going to assume it's plugged in and working. This is the condition it's been in since the day I bought it though, so setting it inside this little pocket here is going to allow you to access all the bolts that we need to for this job. So for this next part, so you don't get confused, you see that black piece of plastic on the other side of the crash bar? I don't have it on this side. It was probably knocked off by someone careless in the past, but you will have something that looks like that on this side. Where we're looking next is the bottom side of this bolt here. Okay, so way under there, it's going to be a number 10 triple square, and we're going to remove this bolt from both sides of the crash bar. Time for a rant that only the Canadians will understand. So, Canadian Tire has triple squares for sockets for sale. Obviously, that one person takes out the number 10 and puts in a hex, and then that's the only one left. Nobody gives you any customer service, so I have to go in a different section and find these ridiculous half-inch triple squares, and I have to put in a 13mm socket, and I can't find my extension, and with the drill it's all too long to go underneath the car. I'll make it work, but yeah. Just use a normal number 10 triple square. If you have the ridiculous setup that I do, this will work too. These weren't too tight on my car. They should have been tighter. Just make sure when you put them back, you crank them in pretty good. Other side. This bolt was in there tighter and it was cleaner. Don't worry about supporting the crash bar when you're taking out those two triple squares unless you're on a severe downhill, because this is held in with the structure. You can take the bolts out, then come back and pull it out. One big difference with the A4 is this module on the front. It is on this crash bar here. There's going to be a number of ways you can go about this. You can take off the electrical connectors, the little 10mm, and completely remove it, which is probably the safest way and the most involved way. What I'm going to do, again, I don't want to go into old dusty electrical connections, so I'm just going to remove these two 10mm bolts. I could make it easier and just remove the one down there, but I don't want there to be any odd shift on this plate, as this stuff has lined up like this over the years, and anyone that's worked on old cars knows the less you touch in this kind of stuff, the better off you'll be. So we're just going to take these two off, and then I'm going to find a way, see if it'll either sit up here, because there are two clips where the wires bundle into. I'm going to gently take those out. If I can set this on top here, I will. If not, we'll see what I do. I'm working for the camera. You'll be directly in front, so taking this off, the crash bar, everything, you're going to have good hand motion. I'm doing it all from the side so that you can see on the camera. But definitely support this module when you are removing it. Not so you get too pushy, but this bracket, metal bracket, holds it in pretty good, but still support it. Alright, so as you saw, the wires are a bit too short to set it way up on top. So I'm going to get a small bungee and I'm going to put it somewhere up there. Be very careful not to stress those electrical wires. If you think you're clumsy, disconnect the electricals. Alright, so this may get in our way further into the removal for service position, but for now, this short bungee, it's not damaging any wires here, but I did have to put it on the second part of the S-curve and put it through the lifting eye of the motor. This is holding this just fine. So we'll get the crash bar off and we'll see if we have to do anything more with this. For the crash bar, you want to just pull straight out. When you set it down somewhere, you see at the ends there where the little horns were attached? This is kind of why I prefer to have the horns off actually instead of taking off the electrical connectors, because you have less of a chance of damaging those fragile plastic horns, but you also don't want to bend in the tabs for the horns. So set it down on the ground just the same way that it is in the car. Now, a lot of your cars are going to be old and might have been in mysterious small accidents, big accidents, whatnot. My car, as you guys have seen in past videos, this headlight has always been wobbly. I'm pretty sure there's bolts missing for both headlights. Sometimes it's just the structure holding them in. You definitely want to find these idiosyncrasies of your car out before you do this so that you don't get a headlight falling out and breaking a lens. You don't technically have to take this off, okay? But I might have to take off the headlight in my job so that it doesn't fall out. But we will see how it goes. Moving on to the impact braces, this is different than the A4, so you need to pay attention. So with the A4, you can use straight extensions. You can pull this coolant line back and forth possibly and use a straight extension on the 10mm in there. So there's 3 13mm on both sides and 1 10mm. Use some kind of a universal joint for that 10mm though. Old coolant lines, you don't want to stress them out on the way in and out. So that's the only real difference here. On the other side, all of the bolts, the 313s and the 110, can be accessed with straight extensions. It might not show in this angle, but you have to be very careful of all of these wires that you see running around so that you don't pinch them in your tools. This is the passenger side. Note that the horn is in no way in the way. Take out the 10mm I'm pointing at before you take out all the 13s. You want to use a short 10mm socket. Look, right now I have that deeper socket 10mm on there. It's pinching up against that coolant line. We don't want that. As usual, you can never find a short 10mm when you need it. So I'm going to use a flex head 10mm ratcheting wrench instead. This can also be used here. But the access point is annoying enough that I'm going to look for my short 10mm. No short 10mm socket anywhere in this garage. I'm going to have to use the flexing wrench. Annoyingly, this doesn't work because of all the access points in here. And if you remove the horn in the way I have, this is where your klutzness will knock this off. So I'm not saying it's overkill what I say of not pushing these coolant hoses up and down. If you have a short 10 and a universal, don't do this. But I am going to be forced to just push this up a bit and put a straight 10 all the way in there. It seems like it's safer to go from the top if you have to resort to this. Remove it gently down under the coolant line, avoiding the horn as well. It's going to take a bit of a delicate motion here, okay? Because you can see the length that goes in there, and then you have this plastic piece underneath here. It's torn up on the other side on my car. You may have it there, but you're going to have to twist and turn this to get this out of this area. Hold the horn with your left hand so that you don't drop it on the ground. Be careful not to damage the coolant line in the process. Now, while we're in this area, before we go to the other side, I'm kind of doing this along as I go, okay, just using common sense. this coolant line, I'm going to shift the camera over to the left a bit. It is on here on this plastic clip. I'm going to gently pull this out, pry open with your fingers first, okay? Then remove the coolant line, because when this comes into service position, this piece with the rad is most likely going to move forward a bit. I don't know if this needs to be completely removed. We will find out with my car. I'm going to do it without completely removing it though. If there is too much stretch on either end of this coolant hose, I will tell you. If I damage it, we will replace it so that you guys don't do the same. Once again, this is the cord that goes to the horn. Okay, see, I dropped it. It's fine. Be careful. You can just set it in there. You don't want to pinch or pull this cord, okay? This came out very easy. So this should give us enough stretch for the minimal amount of service position that we are bringing this forward. You can just tell this car was at some ridiculous body shop at some point in its life. Look at these zip ties going through here, holding this stuff all together. There might be oddities on this car because of this hack work that you guys might have different tabs or screws, but we'll keep going. But do be aware that my car has this kind of stuff, and I am going to point them out if they're restrictive factors. You might have something else in this space. Things to pay attention to on this side. This is really important, okay? The bolts are the same, okay? 313s and 110. But look here. You see these wires? Those run up to that module that we have set on top of the car. When you come to take this out, if you clip those, you're going to toss that down. So you really want to maneuver this mount out very carefully. You also don't want to tear any of these wires, and you don't want to take out electricals where you don't need to. These are very frail in these areas. You don't want to pinch and pull this, okay? So have your hand on it once you get your last 13 out and really carefully maneuver it out. This plastic piece is broken on my car, so it might be a bit easier for me, but you may have to be aware of all of these factors when you're pulling this one out on the RS4 specifically. I don't know if you guys saw that on camera, but the whole rad assembly and everything visibly shifted down a couple, I don't know, about half a centimeter when I took this out. The same thing happened on the other side. Everything's fine so far. Those bolts at the top should be holding it in. But what happened here is possibly a sign of the fact that don't make putting the car into service position something that you do partially and then you come back later, because it might be putting too much stress on those bolts up on the fender at this point, because this is all part of a sandwich structure that holds the rad and all of these assemblies at the front to the front of the car. So, hack bodywork style on the other side. See, I have a normal bolt here on the fender, okay? This is what you guys are going to find on your cars. Or you'll find stuff even more weird than what's on my car with the age that most of these have. And you see here now with this, again, a reason to do the horn in the way that I have. Look at how nasty and busted up this connector is, because the connector clip, right now, obviously the horn is out, but when it's in its original position, that clip is on the inside, meaning it's blind access. So if you put it in there and you pry a little too hard on the wrong spot, you're going to break something. So just take the horn off like this. Don't bother ending up with the mess someone did here. So we'll store these pieces together with the crash bar. So guys, be really careful of these wires. They were getting in my way at the beginning. And this really thin wire here that goes to an important sensor. Okay, this was also in the way. Maneuver very gently. And just in case you were wondering, you see here, this is before we're going on to any other steps. look at how those bolt holes are not aligned with the center anymore. Okay, that means the structure shifted down a bit. Just want you guys to see that before we go on to the next step. While we are here, okay, here's the headlight driver's side. You guys see this little sensor? I'm going to zoom in on it. This is the brake pad level sensor, okay? Some brilliant person in the past who owned this car who put Chinese pads on it took these out, fed them over the fender, and hid them inside. That's why my brake light's on. Hopefully I can get all this stuff up and running and these things aren't corroded. But if you do see something like this in your bumper and you have a brake light service on, somebody might have done this. Fortunately, they didn't cut the wires. I have to be thankful for that. But that's why these are just hanging in here. And this is at all four corners of this car. Next, we're going to remove these two T30 bolts, pull off the weather stripping, and remove this 10mm bolt off the fender on both sides. For me, it's going to be a zip tie on the other side. I'm going to keep the camera here, but once I get these off and I come to slide this forward, who knows if there's going to be more stuff I have to remove. But I'm going to be standing directly in front of the car, and I'm carefully going to move it forward and change the position of these bolt holes, putting this one in the space of this one. I'm going to have to be really careful of this. To take the weather stripping off, I'm going to have to lift up the bungee to pull it out. For the weather stripping, you want to push in and then up. Don't just yank it straight out, you could tear it. In this area here, you want to slide, okay? It could get a bit tight. Then it'll come out. Once you've got it over this, put this back into the eyelet. I tell you what, with the amount that this is coming forward for this level of service position we're doing for this water pump job, the fact that I put the S-hook in this way, I'm actually going to transfer the S-hook back into my hand, and with the amount I bring it forward, I'm going to be able to hook it onto the wider part, accounting for the amount that the carrier is going to move forward. Bungee wise, I can't be more specific because everybody in every country is going to have something a little bit different. But this is around an 8 to 10 inch heavy duty bungee with S-hooks on the end. So if you're using longer ones, you'll have to, maybe you can use this rear eyelet at the back here. It's just behind the fuel pump. Just pay attention to this in the process because this is all dynamic as it moves. And you need to pay attention to every aspect of your specific car and the way you've set it up with tools. My passenger headlight literally seems to be held on by just this one bolt. So pay attention. All this plastic is crap, and if it's all broken off, you could have the same issues. These two bolts are T30s. Okay? Let's go to the other side. Trying to see if you can avoid having somebody helping you here, okay? That's why I'm doing it in real time. Nothing has fallen forward yet. And make note, this car has a lot more components on it than an A4. So this, I might have to update you guys on things that go wrong or if things work out on this car. There's so much sandwiched inside there that anything could happen. Keep two of the bolts accessible in your hands. I put mine on the coolant reservoir. You can't see it on this shot. But the point is so that when you're standing in front and you pull the carrier forward, You can support it maybe with your knee and your thigh, and then put the 2 bolts that are necessary back into their respective holes to hold the carrier in place. But let's see how heavy this ends up being when it comes off. And remember, you want things accessible because you also have to adjust your bungee at this part of the job. Okay guys, this really slid forward quickly on me. I might have really messed up. Let's see. Oh god. Okay, I am going to hold it. Okay, let me see if I can get the camera here. You guys seeing that screw pinching in there? Okay, I'm holding. Ever since I started thinking I'm messing up, I grabbed this part here, okay? Right here in the middle. This is metal under here. Okay, you can slide your fingers under here. This is where the hood latch is, just under here. And I'm supporting it. Because once that screw comes out, this is going to try to jump out on me and us, okay? So this is all real time. Let's see what happens. Okay, let's see if we can zoom it out a bit. Alright. I'm going to zoom in. Okay. You guys see that screw? No, you can't. Jesus, okay. Alright, so let's see what, so I'm holding my hand there, okay, in the same spot. I can't zoom out too much, but I'm supporting the carrier and we're gonna take out this screw finally. Okay, I'm lifting it up. This was not a good idea, by the way, eh? You want to have your hand where I was showing you, supporting the carrier, so that when you take the screw out, the same thing that just happened to me doesn't happen to you, because this could damage the threads or the screws or anything in this area. Okay. Right, you guys are seeing the bungee. Okay. This carrier is all supported by my left hand right now, okay, or else it would fall off. So I'm going to adjust this, like I said. We're going to put it onto the eyelet a little bit loose. I'm going to move my tripod back because it's in the way. Now I guess just watch the carrier motion. That's the best I can show you, okay? Okay guys, I have to support this whole thing and film, so I really don't care about, oh Jesus, alright, okay. Okay, I pushed the tripod over. I'm holding the carrier with my thigh. Oh man, okay. The bungee fell off for the ECU. This module. Okay, nothing happened to it. I'm gonna put my camera down and put this back where we just had it. Nothing got damaged, okay? Famous words, last words of an at-home Audi mechanic. Nothing is damaged, alright. See, everything's back in business. We're fine here. This carrier is quite heavy, okay, for what it is. Look at where my bolt holes are right now. It's not lining up very well as I'm pulling it out. Looking inside of here, okay, this is why I wanted to grab the camera. I'm not going to run over and grab my light because I don't want this to fall and damage the whole car. But there's lots of coolant lines in here, okay? Even this bigger one up here. I don't know how much flex these technically have in them. I don't have a manual. So, looking in here with all of this stuff, I am seeing space open up, okay? We are going to have enough space to get out the water pump issue that I have that we've been trying to solve for a while. But I'm paying attention to all these lines. And like I said, if anything gets damaged with this method that I'm kind of making up with common sense as we go, I will report it to you, okay, if there's any new leaks or anything. But for now, everything seems fine. Lining up this carrier is doable, okay? See, my bolts are accessible by hand here so that I can put them on. This bungee was fine. It worked for holding in the module, although you guys did see it drop one, so be really careful with that. I could have done it if I knew that would happen in the next time. Being careful. All throughout this talking right now, my left knee is supporting the carrier, okay, or else it's going to slide right off. I don't know how heavy the front carrier on an A4 is, but this one's heavy. Okay, I'm going to put the 2 bolts in and we'll see how long it holds it. Again, I'm holding it with my left knee. Not a good idea, okay? The rad AC condenser, whatever the one at the front is. See, I'm holding it with my hand again now up here. This is a far better spot. This is the area you want to, you can slide both your hands in here along this whole area to hold it up, okay? Try not to support it with your thigh. I have to film and do all this stuff, so that's why I was forced to do it. Fortunately, I was careful enough not to bend any of the fins in. These fins will bend in very easily on any machine with a radiator type surface here, okay? So just hold it from here. Don't lean up against it. I've only been doing it for filming. My tripod, you saw I had to toss over in the corner. So, alright, I'm letting go of this. Very bad, dangerous move, okay? But it's not falling off yet. So I'm going to put my tripod back on. We're going to try to pull it in. Pull it out. Alright, let's see what happens. Grabbing it from in here like I told you. Alright guys, looking further in there, I can see that this is hanging by some structure that isn't supposed to be hanging from. I'm talking too much because I need to explain this while I'm going on, but don't do this when you're alone because I don't know where the real pressure is right now. Could be on a sensitive component. But there is a gap that has been built between where those 13mm bolts held into the frame. Okay, it's about 2 centimeters, which should be enough for us to get a wrench in there for the job that I need to do right now. So I am going to pull it forward and see if I can get those screw holes in. Does not seem like we're tearing or damaging anything. Hopefully we'll be okay. By the way, those horns will fall off, but the wires are strong enough to hold them in place. So your call whether you take them off or not. That sound you heard was one of the horns just falling off slightly. Right now that I'm pulling this out, it really does not want to align these 2 holes together. Maybe it's the hood latch cable that I haven't taken off, but there seems to be enough slack in this. Alright, let's try again. You see, everything is loose, seemingly quite loose. It still will not line up. Oh my god. Okay, I'm putting 1 screw back on each side in the original position while I think about this for a minute and figure it out. Alright guys, so I'm back here with you again. Jesus, this is quite heavy. And again, I mean, my gut is telling me that the oil cooler lines that are going in at the way bottom there, okay, see my hand there? This kind of stuff is very sensitive and you don't want to stretch this stuff. I'm hoping that I'm doing this right. pulling the carrier forward. Seems like I have a lot better room. When I was off camera just now, when I grabbed it from the bottom and pulled it forward, it started moving forward a little bit better. So if I'm able to lean over and change the screw holes, we'll see what happens. Okay guys, so I went underneath. The oil cooler lines seem like they do have a decent amount of play in them. So we are going to try this once again now. Alright, so I am going to hold it from the front. I'm going to go underneath where there's more support. You don't want to put pressure on something to break some lines. Okay, let me see. Yeah, way under this entire cluster of supports, okay? There's a flat enough surface. Hold it from here and here. And God willing, we can slide it forward enough to get those holes in. Alright guys, the passenger side is lined up. Oh, okay. Alright guys, let me put in the screws and then I'll tell you what this small piece was that I'm holding it right now with my right hand at the center. Way under all these rads and oil coolers and sandwich stuff that's at the front. AC condensers and whatnot. Okay, I'm putting in my, come on. Oh, just be careful where you grab from, okay? Right now I'm having trouble aligning this one. This could also be an accident car thing, guys. The fact that mine isn't lining up well. I'm having to give it some force, but okay. I'm almost able to get this second one in finger tight. I really don't like this service position on this car. I'm going to put a board of wood underneath this entire sandwiched area here. And some bricks or jack stands or something. You see this? You guys see this movement? This is really sagging down and putting way too much pressure on the top here. So I'm not going to just tighten these down because these are just on a flimsy fender. Okay? You want support under there. This is a bad design. Or I'm doing something wrong. Now, what was it that might have been restricting my movement for this whole past time? This ridiculous plastic piece right here where my middle finger is. Okay, you see the indentation? It has a tab on here. This clipped out and separated from this, so that might have been the only thing restricting me. But a little bit of up motion, grabbing from under the sandwich of radiators and condensers and stuff, and pulling out like this is the key. Okay, this is a very flimsy. Change your bolt holes. Put something underneath the sandwich of radiator stuff with a 2x4. Okay, no pressure on this. You still want the weight to be on here. Okay, just very slight support there to help this out a bit with some wood. That creak you heard right there was my passenger side headlight, okay? This side definitely seemingly accidented at some point. This was seized and stuck in here a little bit, so these are things of old car putting into service position and just working with old cars, you are going to have odd things. So if you do have a helper for this job, it would be good. Can you do it by yourself? For sure. I just did it with the camera and figuring it out. And the stuff at the bottom, okay, see, look at the front. You guys can see everything. Maybe you can't see on camera, but it's all in on an angle a little bit like this. I'm going to put something under there to flatten it out a bit, but do not use these as a support, okay? This ridiculous flimsy design here is the main part that's going to hold all this stuff together. Okay, but looking in here, this is before. I'm putting something in the front to straighten it out. There is enough space now that we can most likely do the water pump job in the next part. You know, the RS4 is great, but these flimsy designs past the 90s, this is just ridiculous, okay? My patience is running thin a bit, but if you can figure it out, under here, there is actually two metal supports. On my car, of course, they're rusted out, but you can put pressure and hold this whole piece up from down here, which would be far better than using those two screws on the fender like I am, which is a reason I want to get this done and get this back out of this position, because my jack stands are too tall with the way I have it in winter storage condition right now. But jacking up the car on all fours is definitely something you should consider doing this, because of the high weight of this big sandwich of stuff here. Okay? And let me see if I can get under there and show you those metal here. Okay? Okay, you see all this rust here? On your car, these are going to be thick pieces of metal that you can put two jack stands and a piece of wood on to hold up this very heavy sandwiched contraption here, if you're going to keep your car in service position for a while. So, again, lifting it higher than my little blocks of wood, which is my winter storage position, will definitely be of help to you here. Can this hanging stuff work out and be fine? Yeah. Is it the way that I would do it if I had the car lifted up further? No. So, depending on how much time and patience you have, you might just want to try this, not support it underneath, and you might be just fine. Although, do note that if you do only this and you don't support from the bottom, we're talking minimal clearances here, okay? So it's going to be easier for you to work if this is slightly outwards and resting on something, as opposed to curled in when you're going in from under in that little small gap that we have to work with. You could also pry it out, but the more you pry things, the worse things usually get. So, your call, people. The ridiculousness of Audis doesn't end. Now, fortunately, okay, underneath there, when I went under right now, I can grab it from that metal space with one hand and pull up slightly, get my hand in there, and I'll be able to do everything that I need to. So that's out of the way. What is very odd though is, well, I mean odd in my case because my car's so low right now, I'm going to take the camera under there, but I'm going to show you all the water pump bolts and what I'm taking out once it's out on the table. Because, again, you don't want to, if you've seen the past water pump series I've talked about it, the coolant leak series, there's 4 bolts on the sides. If you take them out of the plastic casing and you can't put them back, you have to get a new water pump, regardless of whether your problem is a hose or not. People on the forums have said don't do this, as people have had problems with this because it's plastic threaded or something. But these brilliant people here, even though I'm going to take out, there's an aluminum pipe, okay, that runs into the water pump. It's got some size of a hex bolt. We'll go over all this stuff later. And then, because it had such tight fitment issues in there, there's something like a reverse Torx of like a E20 or E15 size, very small, that also has to come out. So it's got like a hex and it's got another bolt going in from the other side, and you got to take another bolt out too. So what I'm going to do next is just open the coolant reservoir, and when I get this aluminum pipe off, I'm just going to drain out whatever fluid's there, take the water pump off, use the remote hose clamp to
take off the hose you've seen in past coolant series, and we will then have everything out on the table, hopefully, and see what's going on. But I will be using the remote hose clamp. It definitely will help. Everything already down here is going to be quite tight. So let's go under the car, and then once I have it all out, we'll go over it on the table. Okay. All right. Okay, so here we are under the car. You see, hopefully I can hold the camera still. You guys see how much movement I'm getting here? Look at it as a reference point there. Come on. There's a lot of movement, okay? Look at the oil cooler lines. They're fine. There's a lot of flex in them. You're going to have to pull it forward to get the bolts off. Okay, you see this little rusted piece here? This could be in your plastic mud shield guard underneath, which you guys would have to take off when you take the bumper off when you're doing this job, for those of you that have it. Okay, this could be also another snag point that your car might have, but this is kind of just hanging in here for me. So check all this stuff underneath too. You see all the space that's opening up here? My left hand is pulling forward from this brace here. Okay? Now this is the tube I'm talking about. This needs to come off. When this comes off, the reservoir cap will be off so that the pressure, so that it can vent from up there and some amount of coolant will come out of here. And then we will be removing the water pump bolts. You see? Okay, I got lucky with an angle here. This bolt is going to come out. There's this bolt. This is what I'm talking about, that reverse one. See, they didn't have enough space here. So these are the two we're going to take out. Even though we're not taking out those plastic threaded ones. This one at the back, which we have to take off, seems like it's plastic threaded. Which is one reason I'm sure why the experienced people on the forums are saying, get a new water pump anyways. But we'll see what happens in my case here, okay? This might be a good place to drain this tube. I'm probably going to do that, honestly, because with the sensitivity of what's in here, I don't want to have coolant rushing out into my face when I'm trying to take out these little tiny rusted bolts on my car. So I'm going to open this to hopefully release... I'm going to open this to hopefully release a good amount of coolant. Then I'm going to remove these remote hose clamp onto the hoses. You can't see here. You can see them in the previous coolant videos that I've made. And then hopefully we'll have everything on the table and we can inspect and go one step further. Here is why you want to lift your car up higher on all fours than I do. Look at my pan. Okay, you guys have seen me have this problem in the past in the winter. But regardless of that, a H5, okay, is going to open up. Watch with my hand. If I don't shake the camera, you see how I'm pulling this forward? This is because of service position helping us. Okay? There's the little drain. It's an H5. And off camera, which I'm going to have to do, a normal 3/8 ratchet. Okay? In this little H5 socket. With pulling this forward. Who cares about focus at this point? Pulling this forward, you're able to just straight put it in there, crack it loose. Right away, you're going to pull this under. If your car's way higher up, obviously have this tank closer by. But if you're lower, you're going to have to do it this way. So I'll check in with you guys after this. Oh, and I'm going to open the reservoir cap so that it can vent. This probably is not necessary, as they do have vents in there. It'll just help it vent faster. Okay? It splashed all over me, but you can hear it all draining. See? That little thing, little drain there, was enough to almost make all the coolant come out now. And it's going all over the place. Look at that. So be prepared for this, guys. I'm showing you this so that you can not make the same... I don't know what I would have done differently. I gotta put another pan on the other side. But you can see this helped it
vent a little faster, and I'm pretty sure a lot of coolant came out of here. A lot. Because it was going before the camera, okay? It spilled all over my coat. Then I grabbed the camera. By the time I turned it on, it came over here. You guys saw how much it kept going. So I had another about 15 to 20 seconds of full flow onto what you just saw on the camera. And here's that little H5 drain, okay? This is also a crucial point. This little drain, I didn't know it was going to be this small, and it has a little washer on it, okay? You do not want to lose these. God forbid you lose these. And if you have an oil container like mine, it could fall in that little hole there. Either fish it out of your pan, or just make sure you retrieve the washer. We're going to put this on the table and we'll come back to it. As you guys can see, I got a little bit of cleanup to do before I go on to the next stage. And yeah, be prepared for it to go kind of all over the place a little bit. Just a helpful point at this stage, okay, before you open that drain, I didn't have it, but have nitrile gloves on or heavy duty dishwashing gloves, okay, because once you open that, it goes everywhere, and 50/50 coolant, the stuff that came out of this, which is Audi OEM stuff, it tends to stick into your skin, and you don't want to go inside, wash your hands and all that stuff, okay? So have the right drain pans and the right stuff on your hands so you can just keep going with this job. Alright guys, so I got the mess cleaned up a bit. That coolant pail, oil pail, is pretty much 2/3 full. Now, a while ago on the forums, I asked, because I was planning on doing the pulling off half the water pump out of the plastic area, which everyone advised don't do that. You can run into problems. So what I asked everyone though was, is that Torx bolt, star bolt, E-bolt, an E10, E9, or an E8? Because when I put this on there, it wobbles a little bit to the point where you think it's a 9 or an 8. Nobody replied and answered, because obviously this is way too specific of a question for somebody to try to remember, even for the people who have actually done the job. So there's nothing wrong with that. Now, I mean, at a general store, these are the sizes you're going to get for a small kit of T's and E's, okay? Yeah, I know this is professional mechanic stuff. You should have more tools, but most of us don't have access to that kind of stuff. So, the correct thing for me to do is to stop this job right now, go and buy all the sizes of E's, E9s, E8s, and continue. But because I'm nuts, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to use this E10, even though it's sliding on that. Even if it rounds it, then I'm going to put a hex on there and try to get it off with the hex if I can't. Okay, here's what I missed. Come on, focus. Okay, here's what I missed. Okay, I don't care about the focus. You guys are getting good information, so just watch the blurred screen. What's happening here is those 4 bolts that I'm talking about that was going to take off the plastic portion, that is not what I'm doing. I'm taking it off of that aluminum pipe that I told you, okay? So even with that aluminum pipe, these ridiculous design engineers have put in some Torx bolts, which we'll get to, which are going to be easier to take off, but I'm obviously going to start off with the hardest bolt. They put one in from the back that is the same as those little bolts that were on the plastic area. So those 4 I was talking about. Even taking the water pump off from the other side requires one of those bolts, so they did not make an easy task for you if you decide to take it off from the aluminum pipe side. You still have to take this off. It's still plastic threaded. I'm going to try it. I'll get back to what you guys say. I hope to God that it comes off with this so that you guys don't have to buy special tools, and neither do I. The clearances are so tight for this one bolt onto the oil pan that a normal 3/8 ratchet with that little E10 is not able to access it. So I'm going to have to put a bunch of extensions, go in from a diagonal and a universal joint and try to get it off, and it's already wobbly and most likely not the right size. Welcome to Audi world, people. So we've got a foot long extension with a universal joint in that E10. My car's very low to the ground. I cannot even get it on there. You're going to have to get under the car in order to get good control on this to twist it off. I have to find a shorter extension, so you're going to need something between 6 inches to a foot for the extension, because the oil pan comes down nice and deep and you need to clear it on quite an angle to get to this one bolt. So be prepared. Couldn't find the 6-inch extension, so we've got this 3 to 4 inch one with the universal joint. I will report back if this worked. Alright guys, so going under there with this setup here, I was able to get it positioned to the point where I should be able to turn this, okay? That oil pan comes down so deep and that bolt area is so close to the oil pan, and you also have the oil level sensor in the way there, but that's not a big deal. But this is like that. And anyone who's used a universal joint, you can't use the other ones, the wobbles and stuff, they won't have enough range, knows that turning something like this in an area like that is like borderline trying. Okay, so I'm going to get the right size. I didn't round it out. I tried one turn and it didn't work. So we'll get the right size and we'll come back to this job. Don't want to strip these. Not worth it. It's going to be a headache of a job if I end up doing that. So we will be back. I'm not going to take out the other bolts. We'll leave that for the other part. But we're going to get a set of 8, 9, E8, E9s, whatever we need. Maybe some smaller tools for here. But whatever contraption I use, I'll make sure to show you guys. But yeah, Audi land. This is what it's all about. Alright guys, so here is how much coolant came out. Don't mind the oil. I use that pan for oil and coolant. But before my camera battery runs out, that's about a 3.78 liter washer fluid jug. And one filled up about a third of the way. So let's call it about 5 liters plus or minus for how much coolant you should expect to come out when you open that drain. I've got a little milk container here. All the bolts and everything are in here. They're all different enough that I can tell, along with the tools and sockets I used in this job. So you can keep everything together if you're organized. Now while we get the parts, tools that we need, I've got the battery tender back on. And this is what everything looks like, okay? We're just going to leave it in this position. I never supported it from the bottom. And we'll see if everything turns out to be fine. Okay, I'll tell you guys if anything happens, but this should be okay. So with prying forward on the bottom of the area that I have in terms of service position now, I'm going to try to get in some very narrow tools. Most likely it's a T30. I will tell you after I do it because I have poor filming angles down there. What enabled me to take the aluminum pipe off. And I'm going to pull the aluminum pipe out a little bit. Then I have to come back to the hoses on top and on the side of the water pump. Use a normal hose clamp pliers or remote hose clamp pliers to undo those hoses from the actual plastic part of the water pump. And then the water pump and the aluminum pipe are going to pull out together off the shaft that runs the water pump, and we're going to remove it all as an assembly. And the bolt that I told you I'm going to get tools for in the previous clips, I'm actually not going to do that yet because that's going to be far easier to access and not damage once the water pump is out with that aluminum pipe. So that's the next step. Look forward to the next clip after I do this. Alright guys, so a lot of you will remember this tool from the Carbon Clean series. Most of you will have this small Mastercraft 1/4 inch. I have on here right now a T25, slightly extended, and then I have a short T25 and a short T30. I think it's a T25 under there. I'm going to try going first with a really small one because the clearance is really tight. You really have to search for those 2 bolts that hold the aluminum pipe onto the engine side to undo them, and it's a very tight area. You'll have to pry forward the area that you have in service position. So I will report back with what tool I ended up using. Alright, so we're back. The small wrench, it's a T30. It's not a T25. I only have a really small T30, and clearance wise the little tool does not get in. I'm hoping there's enough room for a T30. This is from a Mastercraft Maximum kit. This one here on a standard 3/8 drive ratchet is going to be able to get them both loose. It would really help if you had somebody to hold up the service position area from the bottom, those metal plates I told you, in order to give you access. It can be done one-handed, which I have to do right now, or you can take the time, like I've said before in the video, jack the car up nice and high and get proper supports under that service position area so that you have that extra 1 inch of space without having to work one-handed. Let's see how it goes for me. Another scary moment when I leaned underneath and held up with my right hand the service position bar at the bottom that you can use one-handed, left-handed. You can get that T30 in there, but when you come to twist it, it got on a bit of an angle and I started feeling that it's going to strip, and I said, no way, I'm not risking this. So I'm going to use bricks or whatnot, with whatever level I have, to fully support underneath that metal bar under here so that I can get in there two-handed and really focus on getting that bolt off properly. You also want to put these supports on the driver's side, because if you put them along the whole bar there, then you're going to have no hand access to get to the bolts. Alright, so here's what my supports look like. It ended up being 3 bricks and an ATV hitch. A small piece of plywood would have been better. What I want to make clear, because you can't really see it from the outside, is there is no weight resting on this cooler here, okay, that the light's flashing on. The weight is resting on that rusted metal bar, which is a support structure. That part of the hitch is on the support structure. Do not put weight on any of the coolers. Cut my leg on that thing on the garage, but that's fine. What is the problem here? So even though this is supported, that extra lift of support that this structure needs coming further out like this is very significant. Okay, if you can have someone to pry it up for you, that's your easiest best bet. But if you're on your own like me here, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull with my left hand from the metal structure on the passenger side. And because I don't have much to work with here, I'm just going to grab some cardboard and I'm going to keep putting cardboard underneath the ATV hitch until I have that full outwards range motion, because every millimeter counts here. Right now with this pulled out, maybe say 50% of the way, it's still not enough space. Alright, so the cardboard was also a waste of time. I ended up pulling it so far forward that I put the thicker end of the ATV hitch in between the bricks. You can't really tell, but now it's completely straight, the service position area, and I can get further into there. Another point I want to make, when you're under here, it might be a little bit annoying and you'll get tired doing this, but when you're underneath here trying to work, your hand may try to grab for support. The first place your hand will go is on one of the coolers over here, and you don't want to put pressure on them, so be aware of this while you're working. Keep your hands on the floor the whole time. Let's see how it goes now. This arrangement of tools fits, but I haven't been this scared in a while to do something like this under there. So the bolts that go into, that hold that aluminum pipe in, they're very shallow. They're not deep Torx, okay, which means they're easy to strip. I don't know how soft they're going to be. On my car, they do have some rust on them too. So now that I have this clearance issue solved, I'm going to go back to the little Mastercraft 1/4 inch and see if I can use that. If I have to put that little T30 in a 5/16 socket or a 1/4 inch socket, I'll let you guys know. If this ends up being way too iffy and I feel a strip, we're taking the whole front end off this car. I am not risking it, because one bolt is enough to cause Audi chaos. So yeah, next we'll update you next. The small bit does not work. That in the center there is just a magnetic normal drill bit that you all probably have from Home Depot. I'm going to put that into the 1/4" ratchet with the T30, and that length should be able to work. This is our final tool length we're going to be attempting with. It's just over 7 centimeters. The tool on the left, I was able to get it straight. I put it in. I was able to even get one of my hands in behind to provide good support. You can barely see it on the screen maybe, but you can see some slivers of metal on the T30 there. Working on old Audis, you don't want to take these risks. Those bolts are very shallow, very easy to strip. So, now that I have the front end supported with the bricks and the ATV hitch, I'm calm enough that, nothing else is being pinched down there, and we're fine to leave this project for now. The things I'm going to say are, we could probably undo some more lines and put this into a secondary service position, which brings the front carrier even forward more. I've seen videos on this for Audi A4s, but like I said, these cars are more complicated. The V8 has a lot more components, and this front carrier is quite heavy on this car. I don't know how heavy they are on A4s, but from my feeling, I don't want this hanging from 2 bungees over there, just flopping forward, and then I'm underneath again in this very annoying position with those extremely shallow T30 bolts. I mean, they're shallow, okay? Maybe if you have a 50,000 kilometer car, this will be fine because your bolts will be in better shape, but they're tight and they're not coming off, and I got a couple slivers of metal on there. So my goal here is going to be to do a front end removal, okay? I'll go through the processes of that. If you're luckier in this case, good for you. You can keep going on and remove this stuff. I will show you, for those of you that are going to be able to do it in this stage, okay? There's your water pump hoses. You see the clamps? There's one there. If you get that aluminum pipe loose and you're able to push it forward in this stage, then you can undo this hose, work it out, then use your remote hose clamp on the upper hose, which in my case was the issue, and then you can pull this slightly off of that shaft and get it off. In this case, I can only show you my case. We are most likely going to do a full front end removal or a secondary service position. That's going to be in another video. I know I've done a lot of repeating in this job, but it's all just to help you guys. Another thing I'm going to say is when you're crawling around here, working underneath, you're going to try to position yourself. Do not grab the coolers. You don't know how many times I caught myself almost grabbing onto those coolers at the bottom. Here we are the day after. Even when you clean up the coolant with a bunch of rags, it continues to spill. I flipped over one of my mats. There's coolant underneath and it's very slippery, so if you're using the same setup as me, make sure to flip these over and clean them up, or swap out your maps once you've completely cleaned the floor. So, unfortunately, this was not a successful video of getting the water pump off, but my goal is to be transparent here, and these things happen when working on old cars. So look forward to the next part of this series.